The initial college football playoff rankings are just less than 1 week away at this point. We got Steve Helwick on the line from Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt to talk Cincinnati and the group of five with us. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, and November's approaching, and there's really nothing like November college football. That's where teams need to get those wins for the playoffs, New Year's Six Bowls, and it's always an exciting time of the year around Thanksgiving with football going on.
Absolutely, and it's intriguing, certainly, what we have with the Bearcats in particular. So this is a program that went out and scheduled Indiana and Notre Dame with the thought that, hey, we want to bulk up on the non-conference schedule and impress some people. And, of course, the Notre Dame game is a top 15 win at this point. Notre Dame could finish 11-1. Who knows? That could be a seriously marquee win, and certainly is right now as it stands. Indiana has faltered, but still a capable football team to a certain extent. So your thoughts about Cincinnati's resume, what they've shown us thus far as it stacks up around the nation?
Well, in the Luke Fickell era, Cincinnati's identity has always been a strong defensive team, and this year's team is no exception. They're currently fourth in the country in scoring defense, averaging just 14.6 points per game. And even the most talented team that they faced in Notre Dame was a victim of that scoring defense. They were shut out in the first half and only able to put up 13 points on the Bearcats defense. Even though Cincinnati had some guys go to the NFL draft this year, they have restocked and reloaded. And one name I really like on this defense is Deshaun Pace, who is probably the defense's MVP this year. He has 3 interceptions, 6.5 tackles for loss. He was an outside linebacker that didn't get much playing time in the 2020 team that was third down conversion away from undefeated in the Peach Bowl. But Pace has been excellent this year. And of course, this team has about as stacked as a secondary as anyone in the country. You have Sauce Gardner, who's an All-American last year. You have Kobe Bryant and nickelback Arquan Bush, who are some of the best cover corners in the game. And Cincinnati has not faltered this year so much in the pass defense. So the Bearcats are really well all around on defense. But what's different this year is they have a top 10 scoring offense. And Desmond Ridder has done a really good job playing mistake-free football, and that deep ball has worked pretty well for Alec Pierce, Tyler Scott, and the receivers this year. But most important part of the offense is their Alabama transfer running back, Jerome Ford. He's putting up numbers. You saw what he did against UCF 2 weeks ago, getting around 190 rushing yards, and had most of that by halftime. And Jerome Ford right now is 12th in the country in rushing. And if you look at the 11 names above him, only one averages more yards per carry than his 6.8.
Got Steve Helwick on the line, SB Nation's Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt. Of course, Cincinnati continuing on the undefeated track. They've got a date with Tulane on the road. Of course, the Green Wave shook things up a little bit in week 1 against Oklahoma. Caught some attention there, but it's not been the season that they anticipated, as they've typically been a 6, 7, 8 win team, bowl team under over the past few seasons. Your thoughts about the Green Wave?
It's been such a disappointing season. Going into the year, I thought they were the third, maybe fourth best team in the AAC, and I thought that prediction was backed up by what we saw in the first 2 weeks of the season. It's coming within 5 points of Oklahoma and having a chance to win at the end, and then just annihilating an FCS team. And I'm shocked that Tulane's now on the brink of missing a bowl game for the first time in a few years under Willie Fritz, because Tulane has a really talented offense. They had last year, Michael Pratt, as a true freshman, accounted for more touchdowns than any other quarterback in the country. He's had a good season this year, but Tulane, their main problem is their defense just hasn't been as good this year. And they have the 128th ranked scoring defense in the country, allowing over 42 points per contest. Them getting boat raced by East Carolina was really surprising to me. And even though this team has somewhat of a solid offense still, just the fact that their defense struggles has been a real issue. And in fourth down and third down conversions this year, Tulane's really struggled to get those moving and get the sticks going. So I think that Tulane has a lot of things they need to work on right now, and having Cincinnati upcoming on the schedule is really not in favorable shape for a team that really is falling below expectations this season.
Get Steve Helwick on the line, SB Nation's Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt as well. Follow his work right there. And please like the video. Share these videos out on social media. Help us build the channel that way. And subscribe, of course, here at the Voice of College Football. So the game of the year in the American Conference will most undoubtedly be SMU against Cincinnati in a few weeks. Right now, SMU's undefeated as well, 19th ranked in the AP poll, going to Houston, a team that's only dropped one game to Texas Tech early. This should be a pretty good matchup.
It should. And the one thing I want to look at in this matchup is in the trenches. I mean, most times when you think of what team allows the fewest sacks in the country, you think of those big, bulky offensive lines, Michigan, Georgia, not really the flash teams as much. But SMU and their high-powered offense, they have a great offensive line. They've only allowed 2 sacks this season, and those have been in the last 2 weeks. And on the other side of this matchup, you have Houston, which has branded its defense as Sack Avenue, and they're registering over 4 sacks per game. They had a handful against Tulane on a Thursday night a few weeks ago. Derek Parrish, David Aneni, and that defensive line have done a really good job of getting to the quarterback this year. So something's got to give in this matchup. You have one of the best pass rushing teams in the country against the best team at preventing sacks. But SMU also has a tremendous offense led by Oklahoma transfer quarterback Tanner Mordecai. He's been lights out this year. I think only once has he thrown below 300 yards. So you know what you're getting out of him on a weekly basis. SMU also is pretty efficient in the run game. Ulysses Bentley is finally returning from an injury. They're slowly working him back into the lineup. And Trey Siggers, a North Texas transfer, he's done a good job as a battering ram in Bentley's absence. So SMU set in the rushing game as well. It's just, can Houston match that offense? Clayton Tune has been pretty efficient as a quarterback in recent weeks ever since that disastrous showing against Texas Tech. And Houston's offense has looked a little better. But the Cougars haven't been as consistent as they hoped. Like they had 24 points on the board by the second quarter against ECU last week, and they were shut out in the second half until overtime. So Houston just needs more consistency on offense, and that's the key to keeping up with SMU. This SMU team is beatable. Not so good Louisiana Tech team was a Hail Mary away from upending SMU this year. So neither team in this matchup has beat a team with a winning record at the current moment. So both of these Texas-based teams are looking to pick up a quality win here this Saturday.
Yeah, for the next 3 weeks before they get to Cincinnati, SMU has to go through what are considered maybe not necessarily the best teams this year, but the 3 best programs otherwise in the conference, Houston, Memphis, and Central Florida, before they meet Cincinnati. Let's get to the college football playoff rankings, and we can only guess what's going through the committee's mind, and that difficult comparison of trying to compare a undefeated or one-loss Power 5 team that seems to be headed toward a conference championship. And of course, that's going to decide so much versus this Cincinnati in particular, that obviously came into the season with the expectation, and they have fulfilled it. 2-touchdown win against Indiana, although it was a really close game up until about 5-6 minutes left, and then taking care of business with the 2-score win at Notre Dame. Otherwise, a weak schedule for Cincinnati. No Houston, no Memphis on the schedule. Could see SMU twice. Could see somebody else pop up, a Houston, for a championship game. So your thoughts about Cincinnati's ranking next week, where you think they should be placed, how the committee may evaluate that?
They're sitting well at number 2 in the AP poll right now, but the committee likes to mix things up from the AP poll. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually sitting outside of the top 5 in the committee rankings, considering how the committee has viewed AAC teams in the past, whether you think it's fair or not. I mean, the Cincinnati team had a quality win over Notre Dame, and it looked not even debatable on the day who the better team was. The Bearcats pretty much had them punched in the gut from the start, and they had them shut out through most of the game before Notre Dame tried to string a comeback. And if Cincinnati had a kicking game, their kicker's 3 for 8 on field goals this year. If they had a kicking game, that game probably would have been sealed a little bit earlier. So Cincinnati does have that quality win in Notre Dame, but they've had some questionable performances, like Navy last week. They were up 27-10, and Navy recovered an onside kick and only lost by 7 points in the end. But so have other teams up there, like Oklahoma. And the thing about Oklahoma versus Cincinnati is I don't think it matters who's ranked above in the coming week, because Oklahoma finishes their season with Iowa State, Baylor, and Oklahoma State. Those are all ranked wins. I can tell you right now, if Oklahoma clears that schedule, they're going to be ranked above Cincinnati. An undefeated Oklahoma will be above undefeated Cincinnati, and there's nothing the Bearcats can do to control that, unfortunately. Now, when you get into the one-loss teams, that's a little different. Ohio State has Penn State, who's slipped a little bit. Michigan and Michigan State still on the remaining schedule, as Michigan State also play all those teams left. So if you have one of the teams run the table against all those Big Ten East opponents, it's hard to find Cincinnati finishing above one of them too. So Cincinnati needs these Big Ten teams to beat each other. They need Georgia to go unbeaten and take Alabama out in the SEC title game. And they need Oklahoma to lose just one game. I think that's how the formula for the Bearcats to get into the playoffs. And as much as I want to see a team from the AAC control their own destiny, I don't know if it's there at the moment.
Folks, Christmas is coming. You're going to be on Amazon shopping, so you might as well do it with our link. Please help us grow the channel. It's the same shopping experience. You do the same shopping online. Doesn't cost you a penny. It's the same exact experience. Again, grab the link down in the description section below. Put it somewhere where you will remember it. Steve Helwick joins us on a regular basis to break down the group of five in particular. Looking at the American Conference, it's been fascinating here for a number of years because they have, if you put the conference together, they have fared very well against the Power Five, playing nearly 500 football. Recent comparisons with the Pac-12 being down, with the ACC being down, especially outside of Clemson, how it would compare. Unfortunately for Cincinnati, it appears to be a down year for the American Conference. UCF's been better, Memphis has been better, etc. So where do you rate the American Conference? How do you think it stacks up versus what we've seen the last few years when it's been a very strong conference?
Let's see, this current version of the American Conference. Yeah, I think that UCF is definitely the biggest disappointment. A lot of that thing is out of UCF's control. That is the most injured team in the country you're looking at right there. When their starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, had that clavicle injury against Louisville this year, which has kept them out since. They've missed their number one running back, Isaiah Bowser, for a handful of games. Their star receiver, Jalen Robinson's been out for quite a while. They're missing both their defensive tackles. One of their outside linebackers is in the transfer portal, and so on. So that was a team that was really expected to make rounds, and you saw what they did against Boise State on the opening Thursday night, coming back from 21-0 for an inspiring win. But them falling, I think, kind of hurts the perception of the conference as a whole, and especially when some of the other teams like Navy, South Florida, Temple, and Tulsa have all struggled this year, especially in non-conference play. So I think that the fact that UCF and Memphis haven't done as well outside of the conference just hasn't been as great this year. Memphis had that blown 21-point lead to UTSA, another undefeated team right now. So I think that the AAC is just right there with the Pac-12 at the moment. I call the conferences about equal in stature. You have Cincinnati and Oregon, who seem to be controlling their respective conferences right now. But when you look at who's the second best team in the Pac-12 at the moment, is it Oregon State? Is it UCLA? Is it Arizona State? I mean, Utah slipped up last week against the Beavers. I mean, there's so much room for interpretation in the Pac-12. I mean, in the AAC, you have SMU and Houston, which are probably similar caliber to whatever those next two best teams in the Pac-12 are. And the bottom of the Pac-12 might be as bad as I've seen it recently. You have an Arizona team on a 19-game losing streak, which is the FBS's most in the 2010s, other than Akron's 21-game losing streak from 2018 to 2020. Then also you have Colorado, who has been held to single-digit points countless occasions this year. You have Cal, who finally picked up a win against Colorado, their first FBS win of the season. Then Washington lost to an FCS team. They're 3-4. They struggled with Arizona. They beat Cal in overtime. So that bottom of the Pac-12 is not really looking good. And I would say that's comparable to the bottom of the AAC, where you have Temple, South Florida, and Navy right now. So I'd say that the Pac-12 and AAC are pretty equal at the moment, and that's where I'd rank them. The ACC right now, though, I'd say they have a bunch of strong middling teams. You have your Virginias, your North Carolinas, your NC States of the conference. You have a lot of teams that fit in the 35 to 45 range in the country. So I think the ACC is probably stronger in that certain area, and they're a little more, I won't say top heavy, but upper middle of the pack heavy this year.
Yeah, I think you throw Duke to the side and you can take the ACC. I work on power rankings in the ACC every week, and who knows? Anyone can beat anyone in that conference, again, other than maybe Duke and maybe Pitt separated to a certain extent. But yeah, throw any matchup in the ACC, and I would not be surprised with the outcome at all. And to be fair to the American Conference, I think the perception has been strength because of the way they played up against the Power Five aggregate record, but also that there's been a running mate for whoever the dominant team has been. It's been UCF in Memphis, UCF in South Florida before that, UCF in Cincinnati. It's been then Cincinnati takes over, and they've had some stronger teams right behind them, pushing them so that they could, point to quality wins, quality teams within the conference. And right now, again, to be fair, I think it has slid a little bit this year, but still, Cincinnati obviously has its wins. SMU beat TCU. Memphis beat Mississippi State, a team that's gone out and beaten some pretty good teams. So UCF's out of conference loss to Louisville was a last-second deal on a pick six. There have been conditions there that have shown that the American is still a capable league. All right, Steve, anything else? As we take it, one other thing as we kind of scan the country in regards to, you brought up UTSA 7-0, San Diego State 7-0. In regards to anybody else underlying, not that they're going to make a push to the college football playoff because the schedule is just not there, but in regards to a New Year's Six or conference championship races, some of these teams that are standouts right now, and what your outlook is.
I think that the New Year's Six spot is probably going to be reserved for the AAC champion this year, whether it be SMU, Cincinnati, or even Houston. I know Houston had that regrettable loss to Texas Tech in the opening week, where I think if those teams replayed, Houston would have the upper edge. I mean, they had 4 interceptions in that game. They blew a 21-7 halftime lead. And even though Texas Tech's lost Tyler Shuck since then, I think you could put Shuck back in the lineup, and Houston's still the better team, considering what we've seen out of the Red Raiders in the past few weeks. So I think that the AAC champion's going to get the New Year's Six spot for the fifth straight season, which they pretty much held a stranglehold on that. San Diego State has been a pretty good team so far. They snuck past San Jose State in that overtime game a few weeknights ago. But San Diego State does have Boise State and Nevada and Fresno State still on the schedule. So I don't see the Aztecs finishing undefeated with this one. And I think they're going to slip up against one of those 3 powers in the Mountain West, even though all 3 of those games are at home for the Aztecs. Now, UTSA, I think UTSA, even though they had some questionable close games this year against teams like UNLV and North Texas, I do think that UNLV and Middle Tennessee, I should say, I think that UTSA is going to finish undefeated. The only problem with that is I don't think that there's really worthy competition in the CUSA that will get them that New Year's Six spot. UTSA is getting better every single week. They have pummeled Rice and Louisiana Tech the last 2 outings, and UTEP, Southern Miss, UAB, and North Texas is it to close out the season. Then they'll probably run into someone like FAU in the CUSA title game, and I think UTSA is going to handle business and finish this season unbeaten. Still, I don't think that they're going to finish above the AAC champion. But that UTSA win over Illinois is looking better, considering what Illinois accomplished in 9 overtimes last week, although the win over Memphis hasn't looked as strong since Memphis has lost 4 out of their last 5.
Steve Helwick, Hustle Belt, Underdog Dynasty. Join his work and the rest of the staff there on SB Nation, breaking down the group of 5 for us. Steve, we always appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you. Appreciate it.